VigilanteWilliamson here with a very simple question. That is, what does it mean to be the GOAT, aka the greatest of all time? Shout out to LL Cool J. It's the first time I heard that acronym. He had an album in the 90s called GOAT, standing for greatest of all time, and it's been a trendy term. It's a trendy topic on sports talk radio and sports talk TV. It's practically carried to the detriment, I believe, sports talk. But what does it mean? How does one quantify it? And is that even a valuable metric or a feasible metric? Meaning, how can you definitively say a single player is the greatest of all time? That's what is going to be challenged. Now, a couple of non sequitur qualifiers. I'm not going to really talk too much about the esoteric elements of it. Maybe, if you guys want a video on it, I could talk about it. GOAT meaning Baphomet and all the GOAT imagery there is in media and the kind of esoteric evil symbolism behind that. I'm not sure if some people like that sort of stuff, some people don't. But that's not going to really be discussed in this video. I am aware of it, just like I'm aware that sports is rigged. So these discussions are, for the most part, going to be within the kayfabe of sports. But yes, sports are rigged, have been rigged. Even going back in the day, if you look at Brian Tuohy's work, and this is a tangent, but it's worthwhile. Look up Brian Tuohy. Brian spelled B-R-I-A-N, normal spelling. Tuohy, I believe, T-U-H-O-Y. And he'll tell you that Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain were gambling back in the day. So it's like that. And we know we had the situation with Shohei Ohtani. I'm probably mispronouncing his name. The breakout brother in baseball. Maybe I'll talk about a few baseball players as well. But in any event, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. I started with Russell and Wilt. They're eligible to be the GOAT. See, how I view things is there are tiers. There are players that played well enough to get to a tier. So, for instance, while the debate is LeBron James better or is Michael Jordan better, which is the GOAT? That's the most oft used, at least in American sports, right? It's sort of a relevant conversation to me. They both are on the GOAT tier, meaning they have a claim to being the greatest of all time. Now, obviously, certain players will have a stronger claim than others, but it's only relevant that you have a claim and a strong one. And I say that because if you think about all the players in the NBA who could be the greatest of all time, Wilt and Russell both need to be discussed. There is this generation war, and I don't know how to quantify that totally. You can only that makes it even harder to do the GOAT thing, right? But there are people who want to look at the old generation, see it as an inferior product, and just assume that a modern player with all the modern technology would just go back in time and dominate. But you're not listening to yourself. You said with the modern technology. So with older rules and older equipment, things, go a different way. So that's why it makes it even more difficult to crown a singular GOAT. That's why I prefer more of a tier way of looking at it. And that tier could be anything. It could be, okay, who's the GOAT? And even though that position is singular, greatest of all time singular, there may be 5 to 10 guys who could have a claim to be the GOAT. Who's a top 5 player? There may be 20 guys who have a claim to be in the top 5. Where if someone's making a list of who's the top 5 point guards or the top 5 quarterbacks or the top 5 running backs, there's about 20 some odd guys in each list that could end up on the top 5 and you wouldn't look crazy at it. Like Iverson is probably the 30th to 40th best player of all time, which is still incredible. That's not trying to slight. I think that's the thing. When you say something like that, it may sound like a slight to some people. Hell, some people may think I'm overrating him. But wherever he is, he could be in a top 5 list and you wouldn't think it's crazy. You might not agree with it. You could understand why somebody might have Iverson as their top 5, especially when you consider, the elephant in the room is subjective. There's a, Iverson's my top 5. Not necessarily a answer to the top 5 players of all time or whatever, but if you had a top 5, if you had a starting 5, your subjective taste are relevant. But at the same time, nobody will put, and he was a fine player, Jamal Mashburn in their top 5. You know what I'm saying? Maybe top 5 players at Kentucky, as far as the seasons they had. I don't know where his numbers stack up for other college seasons, maybe something like that. But like, if you're just talking about players of all time, even though he was a great player, Jamal Mashburn is not going to be in your top 5. It's ridiculous, right? No disrespect to him. He's maybe top 100 type guy. Which, again, no disrespect. I mean, only so many thousand players are going to make it to the NBA ever. And how many people play basketball? You're still one of the best players to ever play basketball to be, somebody like Jamal Mashburn. But he wouldn't be eligible for any of this stuff, right? You can shout out to Andre Kirilenko. He wouldn't be eligible to any of this stuff. I don't know. I'm going old. Maybe I should go with some more recent players. Mitchell Robinson. I don't know. Good player, fine player, but could never be anywhere close to a top 50, top 100, top 75. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the thing. Because sports talk is so argumentative, because the whole point is to generate opposing opinions for the purposes of being, trolls, hot takes, engagement. We want to foster opinions for engagement, and we want to do it simply. So we'll keep spamming the same argument for a decade instead of covering the nuances of the sport, because it's easier that way, and it gets just about the same amount of fans, because that's all people want to do is argue anyway. We're in the age of everyone wants to argue, everyone wants to disagree, everyone wants to, be a contrarian. A lot of people are angry at the system. They take it out in their YouTube comments or their Twitter comments, etc. And so there's good arguments. You go back to LeBron and James and Jordan of them being each the greatest of all time. But what about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? What about the aforementioned Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell? Think about how much more dominant they were over their own eras. LeBron made a statement about Giannis scoring 250 points, which for a second I kind of fell for. I'm not gonna lie, because Giannis is a great player, and when you think about his athleticism, then you think, wait a second, he's got to do that in Chuck Taylor's, and then he's got to do this against, the 70s had a lot of giants. So depending on what year between the early, mid, and late 70s, early on you might have Wilt Chamberlain, Lou Alcindor before he's Kareem, Wes Unseld, Willis Reed, you know what I mean? Nate Thurman. There's a lot of great centers later on. Maybe Dave Cowens, Bill Walton, fully formed Kareem. In the ABA, you had an Artist Gilmore. And that's another thing. What about the ABA? A guy like Julius Erving has a claim to the GOAT, believe it or not. I'm old enough to remember when people were old enough to have seen him play and thought he was the GOAT. Now, that was a while ago, but I'm talking like early 2000s, meaning after Jordan had his career, maybe he's still with the Wizards. There were old heads who still said, you know what, I think Dr. J is better than him, because I think Dr. J was a lot of what people say about Jordan and Kobe and say, oh, well, he's the 1.0 and Kobe's the copy. There were people who felt that way about Dr. J and Jordan. That narrative got lost in the annals of time. That's statements like that is why I want to make these videos. People would make that argument. I heard that in real life. You know what I mean? I heard that in real life. And, people do feel passionate about their generation of player. There was a time when Walter Payton was considered the greatest running back of all time. Now a lot of people will say Barry Sanders. A lot of that's because of YouTube and Instagram. He's the greatest running back to watch of all time, certainly. Best highlight tape of any running back of all time. And I love Barry Sanders. I'm a Detroit fan. And he certainly has a claim to the greatest running back of all time. But arguments can be made against him. Just like there can be arguments made for people, there can be arguments made against them. Now, I'm not trying to say Julius Erving is the best basketball player and Barry Sanders is obviously not the best running back. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to express how much nuance is in these arguments. Going back to Barry, I can name a good 30 or 40 running backs who are better receivers and blockers than Barry Sanders, or going up the middle. And you might say, well, Barry Sanders was so good at what he did, all those things are negated, which I agree with. But then when you start going through the thin hairs of GOATs, of the greatest of all time, Walter Payton, Jim Brown, LaDainian Tomlinson, Jerome Bettis, Marshall Faulk, Priest Holmes he had a great couple years. Maybe doesn't belong on his list, but man, his years were pretty historic. Sean Alexander, he had a great year for Seattle, had a great couple years. And of course, Terrell Davis, who helped win John Elway 2 rings. Then again, you do have those guys. Sandy Koufax in baseball to an extent, but we have a short career. Gale Sayers, going back to the running back. But I could go running backs all day. I'm leaving out a guy who may have been a cut above the rest in the 70s. You can guess who that might be. Eric Dickerson's another guy. Earl Campbell. There's so many great running backs. A lot of them had things that Barry didn't. Adrian Peterson. You can go on and on with great running backs. Even if you think Barry's the GOAT, other people have claim to that. LaDainian Thomas has a claim to the greatest running back of all time, guys. Just like Jim Brown does. Just like Walter Payton did. Just like Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith gets kind of jobbed out. This is another thing that has happened in these GOAT comparisons. How dare you have a good team? How dare your GM does their job? So where Barry Sanders played for such a subpar franchise like the Lions, though we're doing good now, hopefully. Past couple years we've done good. And then you have a franchise that has kind of switched fates because we haven't won titles yet, let's be honest. But the Cowboys were an elite franchise in the 90s, had one of the best offensive lines of all time. And so Emmitt Smith is looked at because of how great his offensive line was. People are not giving Emmitt Smith the credit he deserves for what he did for Dallas, especially in those days when running the ball mattered a lot more. He was the prime reason they were winning championships. The whole team was. They were a well-built team. But he was the engine that made that team go. He deserves more respect on his name. He's underrated. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to say Barry's overrated. I still love Barry Sanders. Don't get me wrong. I'm not making these arguments because I dislike Barry Sanders. He's one of the greatest players of all time. He probably is my GOAT, to be honest. But I keep an open mind, and that's why I say this is a tier. There are a bunch of running backs on the GOAT tier. Hey, we're talking about players of all time. I often hear Tom Brady as the greatest player of all time. I'm like, well, I don't know. He's definitely got a claim to it, right? He's definitely, to me, the greatest quarterback of all time. By the way, there's other quarterbacks who have claim. But Tom Brady's claim is, I would say, pretty strong. It's so much stronger than anyone else's. Not that there are holes you couldn't pick. We talked about things being rigged. I said that may be relevant otherwise. You could argue that for Brady, a lot of people felt that way for Mahomes this year, and they had to get the Eagles to win. This ain't the last time the Eagles had to win a championship to throw people off the scent, because some people may think that may have happened 6-7 years ago with the Nick Foles team that beat Tom Brady. And now you have this team beating the Chiefs when, people are starting to say, oh, this team is so overwhelmingly good, and the refs, and, the world's a stage. So there's definitely some rigging going on, right? And you might feel, I know that may be a tinfoil take, but there was Spygate, there was Deflategate. He was suspended for Deflategate, from whatever you think of it. These things did happen. The Patriots did have a rep as being cheaters. And they also had a rep for not necessarily using the most talented offensive linemen. And maybe their linemen got away with holding a lot more than other teams. That was something that was out there. The old heads remember. So you may say, hey, did Brady get some extra help, some extra hot sauce? Hey, you might say it for Jordan in the basketball debate. You watch some of these highlights and some of the fouls he get. A lot of people are mad at SGA. I'm telling you, we could put together a tape that piss you off at Jordan. I'm telling you. So that's something to be considered. Does the league give this guy, this team, a little bit more advantage than other people? And thus their greatness is a little bit more enhanced. Speaking of enhanced, I said maybe mention the baseball. Wrong Barry. I may keep that. Speaking of enhanced, I said I would mention baseball, or may mention baseball. What about Barry Bonds? How do you treat the steroid era when it comes to the greatest of all time? Especially when you consider a lot of people that grew up watching that era is now my age. I'm starting to kind of get back into baseball and see how it's been since I last left. It's so much different. I mean, I remember when the shift was the big thing and kind of manufacturing runs was the big thing, and now it seems to be like, you know, all this exit velocity and all this other stats I really don't have any grip for. But that notwithstanding, Barry Bonds is one of the best hitters I've ever seen. I've never seen anyone command that much fear as far as whether or not he's walking, you know, rather not to walk him. They'd walk home runs before they pitched to him. And rightfully so, because he would knock it into McCovey Cove, which was not an easy place to hit. And, well, he was on steroids. So that throws away everything. He's got a claim to the GOAT. I don't care if he ever makes it to that Hall of Fame, which is a farce. Pete Rose not making the Hall of Fame in his lifetime is disgusting. And they ought to be ashamed of themselves. How high and mighty? How high and mighty? Well, listen, we just like watching the games. You ain't got to be all high and mighty. Y'all made all that damn money off the steroid era. These guys literally risked their lives for the game. I'm not saying, hey, they made millions for it. They made the trade themselves. But you guys made a lot of money and then want to be all sanctimonious and not let motherfuckers in your Hall of Fame. Fuck you. That's notwithstanding. But I can ramble all day. My point is, despite what ESPN has done, despite what FS1 has done, despite what every YouTube and Instagram podcast has done in discussing the greatest of all time at a position, at a sport, there needs to be more nuance and more acceptance of that nuance, because there's a lot of people who could be the GOAT. There's a lot of people who could be top 10. And as I go on in these videos, these sports related videos, and I talk about players that I may think of as overrated, underrated, whatnot, we got to remember that's relative to other greatness. I think we've gotten too far up the, if it ain't first, you're last. And that's, you know, that's why these arguments get so passionate. We need to have a little bit more respect for the game. It just, this goes outside of sports. Sports is supposed to be, you know, why is it even relevant even though it's rigged? It tells a lot about the human condition. Too often we are just too much about being the best, being perfect. And perfect is the enemy of good. Maybe I'm telling myself this as much. Hell, my name, I chose the name VigilanteWilliamson after Corliss Williamson, who was the sixth man of the year before we won the title, I believe, back in 04. And he was a small forward, a post-oriented small forward, believe it or not. You can still do that in 04. And he was a sixth man, and he was a good player, and he helped us win a championship. He's not even really thought of when people bring up that team anymore, even though he was very relevant back then. But it's to show that you can still be a champion whether people know it or not is irrelevant. He's still a champion. We would not have won a championship without Corliss Williamson. Make no mistake, he was a valuable piece to that team. Wasn't the most valuable, but very valuable. And there's something to be respected about that. And once you have that baseline respect, you can start, you know, discussing this stuff when you're talking about who's better between Jordan or Kobe. I mean, LeBron. I'm a Kobe fan. I think Jordan and LeBron are better than Kobe, but I'm a Kobe fan. If I could make an argument, he has a claim to the GOAT as well. Not as strong as Jordan or Bronze, but he does have a claim. But seriously, when you're having these discussions, they don't have to be so vitriolic, and they can be a bit more respectful, because it's not like Michael Jordan is Jamal Mashburn. It's not like LeBron James is Jamal Mashburn. And it's not like Jamal Mashburn is you. You know what I mean? It's not like Jamal Mashburn is Brian Scalabrine. It's not like Brian Scalabrine is the guy you see at LA Fitness. You know what I'm saying? Have some respect for everybody. Be more respectful. Respect yourselves. About 20 minutes. I may edit this down. We'll see how it goes. But thank you for watching. If you listen to the whole thing, I appreciate it. We got more of this to come. Peace.